Hey guys, it's Core Ross and Rainbow Six News. Today we are testing the Grim rework in Rainbow Six Siege for Operation Dread Factor. And it should be noted that this rework to Grim that we're going to go over is part 1. There will actually be a part 2 6 months from now for Season 4 where he might get a more substantial change overall. But anyway, let's jump into testing the changes that are coming this season. And we'll start with the radius increase where it's going from 3.6 meters to 4.6 meters. This is a significant increase when viewed in game. But there's also a little bonus here. So originally the only thing that would be detected by the bees was the head. So the head had to be within that radius, and if anything else was, the body or the legs, so if you had a prone operator for instance, they wouldn't get picked up. However, now any part of the body in that radius will begin the pinging of the enemy operator. So my conclusion on the radius increase is that it's a significant buff and it's also more consistent now than it was previously. But this is just the beginning of the buffs. Let's move on to duration now. So once the bees have been fully deployed, they'll hang around for 16 seconds instead of 8. So far better for securing flanks and choke points. However, not everything is being buffed. So for instance, once a defender enters the swarm and leaves it, they'll only be pinged for 4 seconds, but they will be pinged every 1 second. Whereas previously, if you went through the swarm, you'd be pinged for 9 seconds. However, the pings were separated out different timings, with the first one being 1 second, then 3 seconds, then 9 seconds. So the takeaway here for defenders is get out of the swarm as quick as possible. That will reduce the ping time significantly. But be mindful, once you leave the swarm, you're being pinged once every second. If you stay in the swarm, your ping will be constant all the time, continually updating your position. So do not, whatever you do, stay in the swarm. Because that swarm is now going to last 16 seconds, and that's an eternity in Rainbow Six Siege. Up next is activation time, so it is far quicker than it was previously. Before, it would take 1 second for the canister to drop to the ground and activate, whereas now it is 0.4 seconds. However, they have made the projectile that attaches to the wall vulnerable to gunshots, so you can shoot it. However, if the canister makes it to the ground, it is bulletproof, and you only have 0.4 seconds to take it out. It's also technically destructible by lasers and melee as well, but I'm assuming you're probably not going to be trying to get in melee range of this thing, because if you mess up, you're in the center of the swarm. So the conclusion here for me is that I would rather probably move away from this device when it hits a wall, rather than try and shoot it. But certainly if your reflexes are good enough, you can stop this thing from deploying. And then there's another aspect that you need to be paying attention to as a Grim player, and that is the rate of fire of your gadget now. It was previously very slow to fire off hive after hive. Now you can just pump them out real quick, which means you can just saturate an entire area with your bees, giving the defenders very little chance of taking them out or avoiding being detected, and hopefully making you a little bit less vulnerable. Now let's move away from the gadgets and talk about the additional buffs he's also getting, and this is in the form of an improved loadout, as he's getting 2 additional options on top of what he already has. So for instance, he's going to have the Bailiff as a secondary shotgun options, which will be great for busting holes through walls that will be perfectly sized to shoot your bees through. And you also have the addition of the secondary Heartbeat as another option as well. Just makes him all round more versatile, and whatever your playstyle may be, you should be able to get the right kit for you. But overall, I'd say that the loadout changes are pretty insignificant compared to everything else, and definitely nice to have, but it's the gadget changes I imagine that are going to make the significant balance change here. However, the largest takeaway here for me is that this is a significant buff to Grim. So much though that I expect to see him get played a lot more. Whether he ends up being a good or viable operator, it's still going to be sometimes situational, and you're still going to be super vulnerable with that launcher out. But what I will take away from this is that part 2 of this rework, I expect to see significant changes to the gadget in general. The reason for my thinking here is that most of the buffs we see here are huge, with only a few minor nerfs alongside them. And that makes me think that part 2 of this rework, which is coming in season 4, 6 months from now, is probably going to be a significant change to the gadget. I think it will still be launched with the launcher and all that. I think the visuals will kind of remain the same, but I can totally imagine this going to proximity base, basically being an attack or trap operator. Or that when you launch these bees into a certain area, they actually do something other than detection. So my main takeaway is that I think this is a band-aid. This is a buff to make him viable, and it's significant buffs, But the idea, I believe, is something totally different in 6 months' time, and we're going to see a new Grim. But I could be wrong. I just don't see them being able to buff further than this. If they keep the gadget the same way that works right now, there's not really much kind of space to buff above what they've done already. That makes me think they're going to have to do something significantly different. And also, they've been very tight-lipped on what the part 2 will actually be, which makes me think there's a lot more development time to go into it before they even get a playable version. Whereas we already got teaser gameplay of the Frost rework 6 months before it's scheduled to come out. But guys, I'd love to know in the comments below what you think of this current rework to Grim, where he's just basically buffed all round with minor nerfs. And what's your guess about part 2 of this rework? What will it bring to Grim in 6 months' time? And is it going to be good or bad at the end result? Anyway, I'm going to be jumping in and definitely playing a ton of Grim in the new season Operation Dread Factor, and we'll see if these buffs are able to turn his fortunes around. Anyway guys, thank you very much for watching. I'll catch you next time.